This July 19th, I will have the unbelievable honor of celebrating my wife and I's 25th anniversary. 25 years of being married. Wow, it's unbelievable. And people look at our marriage and say, wow, what an amazing marriage. What is the secret? What do you do? What is it that you do in your marriage that keeps you believing or acting the way you do? See, to me, I wake up every morning, I see my wife as the woman that I love the most on this earth. The thought of spending a day away from my wife even goes to the point that it hurts my heart. I don't travel anywhere without my wife overnight. It's a safeguard that I put in place a long time ago when I started to do a lot of large events, because amazingly enough, you won't believe this, I could have been doing a Christian event and I still have women come and give me their phone number. I've done events with my wife next to me and still women give me their phone number, not because I'm something special or anything like that. It's just that we live in a world today that, there's just not a lot of apprehensions. So how do you get this amazing marriage? How do you get a marriage? How do you, right now, if you are part of that statistics, that you are either separated or that you're looking at your wife or your spouse and you're saying, God, how can I get out of this? Or you look at and somehow are finding comfort in another human being. If you're a man, you're finding comfort in another woman. Or if you're a woman, you're finding comfort in another man. And in a world of social media where so many relationships get started on Facebook and other social media sites, then it seems to be so easy. But first of those myths is that I want you to believe this with all your heart. It is not greener on the other side of the fence. If you look at your marriage and it's going to crap and you say it is my spouse's fault, and if you, like me, have been married more than once, if you've been divorced, I was divorced 3 times. And if you looked at yourself and you keep saying, well, I just keep picking the wrong person. Well, maybe the thing that you need to analyze is that there was one common denominator to all your failed marriages. And that common denominator is that you kept bringing yourself into the marriage. So what do I mean by that? As you look at my marriage, I want to tell you a story. See, I teach a lot by telling stories because I believe that people change when they see that somebody else has changed. I believe people's lives are impacted when they hear a story that somehow resonates with them. Well, into the 7th year of my marriage, my wife and I were struggling, building a business. It was becoming very successful. I wrote the book, Coming Clean. It was a big hit. I was told by the publisher that I would do 10 media interviews, that I would go and do 1 city tour, and that, I would do a couple of book signings. Well, the truth of the matter is that 4 months later, I didn't do any of that. I ended up doing 365 media. I ended up going to 5 cities. I ended up doing 5 to 7 book signing. I would come home. The publisher would send me home in a limo. I would change clothes, kiss my wife and kids, and be gone again. I thought I was doing something amazing. I thought I was out there saving the world. The interesting thing was that I did not realize that while I thought I was serving God and doing God's will and saving the world by sharing my story, 2 things were really lurking in the back. Number 1, I was beginning to enjoy my story all over again. I was reliving my past through my present storytelling. But 2, and most important, was I was abandoning my family. And that was really, really difficult because we had 2 little kids. And here was my wife still working at the office, trying to raise 2 little kids, and her husband out there being a celebrity. So I assume that she should be happy because look at her. She's a Christian like me, and we met in Bible college, and she should know that I'm doing God's will. Really? I wasn't. I wasn't doing God's will. I was doing my will. I was getting and enjoying being famous again. I was enjoying of reliving my drug lord days in my storytelling. And I came home one day and my wife said to me, I want a divorce. I thought it was a joke until the next day when I got served with divorce paper. You can imagine what a shock I went through because we had never had a fight ever until then. I wondered then at that time why. Truth is, I just never gave her a chance to have a fight. Somehow my personality overpowered her. So when I realized that this was real, my first defense was, well, fine. I know how to do divorce. She wants a divorce? Let her have a divorce. I'm blameless before God. Number two is, you know, I have 4 children from a prior marriage. 2 more ain't going to hurt nothing. I was lying to myself. I had been lying to myself for a long time. You know, for a person that really values integrity and truth so much as I do, I didn't lie to others, but I was lying to myself. I was lying to God. I was lying to my wife, not verbally telling her a lie, but just lying in the way that I was behaving. I had let this world begin to consume me. And then I realized that, you know, I can't go on like this. I cannot go on and thinking, well, let me go back for a minute. One of the things, then I began to think that, you know, if God is so mighty, why would he allow this divorce? I know the Bible said that God hates divorce. See, I had also created a view of God that was a false God. That was what, like recently I heard a message, I'm going to do a message about it. My pastor said it was a fairy tale God. You know, a God that is not real. A God that is worth abandoning. Because the real God doesn't punish me. The real God does not impose harm on me to teach me a lesson. See, the real God allows me to have self-will. And the real God is there to love me through my ugliness. But nowhere does he say that he's going to eliminate the pain from me. As a matter of fact, as a biblical scholar, I should have remembered that verse that said, in this world you will have trouble, but be of good cheer. I have overcome that. Nowhere did he say, in this world you will have trouble and I'm going to shield you from that trouble. No, he's overcome. So his love is more than sufficient for me to go through the trouble that life will bring, because we will all have trouble. We will all get that news that is devastating. And then we all have a decision to make. So going back to this, I began to struggle with myself. I began to ask myself, what was I doing wrong? You know, I began to listen to my wife and, you know, and begin to feel her pain, but didn't start there. So I talked to a good friend of mine, told me about an amazing ministry outreach for marriages in Colorado. And I went out there for a whole week. At the beginning, she just refused to go. She just felt that, hey, she didn't want to save the marriage. She just wanted to get on with her life. One thing that I was not contemplating or even realizing was in the back of all this that my wife was suffering from clinical depression. You see, depression is real. It's a sickness. It's like cancer. It's like any other sickness that we have. But for me, as a hard-headed Cuban, I felt that, hey, if you're depressed, it's because you're lazy. So the best way to be undepressed is just get your ass out of bed, get busy, and you won't be depressed. Not true. Not true. It is an illness, a serious illness. Mental illness is a serious illness. I thank God that we're coming to a point in our society, in our world, that we're beginning to realize that. And we're beginning to no longer just avoid that subject or evade it or just put it aside, but to realize that it's hurting a lot of people. A lot of people are hurting because of mental illness. And mental illness does not mean that they're crazy. It just means that they have an illness. Like I have a heart defect. I didn't realize that. So I went in went to the counseling, came back, nothing got better. We decided to go back. I convinced my wife to go the second time because she could become a better mother. And that was my lie to her. It wasn't a lie for me. I look at it now as, God, was I crazy? What was I thinking? I just wanted her to go because I thought they could fix her. See, it wasn't about fixing me. I'm okay. I'm doing God's will. I'm a preacher. You know, look at the great thing. Look at all the people that think that I'm better than ice cream. She's the one that needs fixing. How wrong I was. In the middle of it's a 5-day, all day long. In the middle of the second day, she just walked off and went home. And that was really, really hard for me. But I began to discover a lot of things about me. So my marriage was not getting any better. No matter how much I prayed to God to fix my marriage. See, because we think of God as a mechanic. We have a problem, God can fix it. And if he can fix it, I'll just walk away because he's not God then. No. God, many, many times, God definitely is not a mechanic. And many, many times he ain't going to fix anything. And we're not going to understand that. Perhaps one day we will. So I stuck it out. I went back, and again, I thought things would get better. I began to learn a lot of things about me. I began to deal with a lot of issues from my youth that I had carried, a lot of traumas in my life as a young kid, being abandoned, being left behind by my mother at the airport, learning things that my father, who was a hero, who was the man I loved the most, but having to admit that my father was wrong a lot of times. See? And my mother, who was everything in my life, was also wrong. Because my mother, who never forgave my dad when she caught him cheating one time, and even in his deathbed, she walked away when he asked for forgiveness. This amazing woman that sacrificed her whole life for her family, she was wrong. Because see, she would take messages from my mistresses. So, yeah, amazing people that you love are broken. And it's good to realize sometimes that we are all broken and that we all have things that are difficult and wrong with us. So I went back to Atlanta, got busy. I got served with a notice to go to court. I didn't go. Served with a deposition. I didn't go. I was not going to just, I told her, I said, hey, let the cops come and drag me out of that. I'm not leaving the house. And I'm going to fight for this marriage. Well, this pastor or this therapist called me and said, how are things going? I said, really, in reality, they're going worse. They've gone from bad to worse. And he's like, do you want to fix your marriage? And I looked at him like, oh my God, that's got to be the most stupidest thing I ever heard. Of course, I've abandoned my company. I've worked 24 hours a day. I've gone to Colorado twice. Of course I want to fix my marriage. He said, then you need to go off to the mountains. See, I had a house a cabin in the mountains of Tennessee. He said, you need to go there and you need to pray. And you need to ask God the following. Number one, to show you your wife's pain, not yours. Number two, to show you what God's love really looks like. So I invited this friend of mine, Ty, that was running the ministry for me. And we went off to the mountains of Tennessee, and it was cold. It was I think it was around November. And it was cold as hell. And we went out there, and we fasted. We fasted all day Friday. Stayed in the jacuzzi in the middle of the night, and prayed. Froze my butt off. Nothing happening. Same thing the second day. And then the third day, I was hungry. I was going through everything. And all of a sudden, this biblical verse from the Gospel of John began to run through my mind. Now, mind you, I did my master's in Jewish background to the New Testament. I have read the Gospel of John 1,000 times, if any. I read it in Greek. I read it in Latin. Read it in Spanish, German, French. I read all the different translations. And I can tell you something. Never thought a second about this verse, but the verse was the following. I love you when you were a sinner. What began to happen at that moment was that through my mind, all these images, all this horror I have done throughout my life. The many times I cheated on my ex-wives. The many times that I did horrible things with porn actresses and hanging out with porn actresses and strip clubs and the horrible things that I did in the cartel. All that began to, and I began to weep. And it was like, how could you love me then? And it just kept banging in my head. I loved you when you were a sinner. And then I realized this God I love so much and serve so much doesn't need me to get cleaned up to love me. He didn't need me to change my life before he loved me. He loved me since the day I came into the world because he created me. And then something clicked. I looked at Ty, I said, I got the answer. I'm going home. So I got home late Sunday night. And Monday morning, when we went to work, I was headed to work. My wife decided she was going to quit working at the office. I went and I said to her, I'm going to love you for the rest of my life, no matter what you do. And she said, I'm still going to divorce you. I'm fine. So finally we agreed with the attorneys. Here we built a multi-million-dollar business, and all she wanted was just $140,000 ranch house. We went to look at 3 houses, and I went into every bathroom of those houses, and I just wept. Because I was losing the woman I loved the most on this earth. And it wasn't her fault. She was a saint. And I loved her like I never loved anything in my life. Began to feel like what God really love looks like. When he loves us so much, and then we just really don't care. Anyways, then she said, then I had to buy her a car. I said, what car do you want? She said, well, see, I always told you that I never wanted a big Land Cruiser that you spend $100,000. All I wanted was smaller BMW for me. And that was at that time was like $30,000. But see, this is a pattern in my life. Whenever I wanted something, I would wait till a holiday. So for example, one Valdes Day, I said, look what I got for you. I wanted a barbecue grill, a Weber. And I got it, and I told her that was her gift. No, it was really my gift. The same thing with the Land Cruiser. I drove a pickup for the company, and then we need another car. And I'm like, look at the car that I got you. Well, she didn't want that car. I wanted that car. So she said, I'm still going to leave you. I said, well, you're going to leave me in style. But what happened was I began to love my wife unconditional. I began to love her the way that I felt that God loved me. That no matter how bad I did, no matter how many times I turned away from him, no matter how much of an atheist, how much I hated him, how much I just did not even believe that he was a God, how many times I took Bibles from inmates and threw them in the garbage can. Still loved me. Crazy. And I began to love her unconditionally. And then she ended up getting help for her depression. And all of a sudden, she comes to me one day and she says, I don't want the divorce anymore. I want to make this work. It's going to be hard, but we'll make it work. And it was hard. She would get in the back seat of my car. She would muster enough energy to take my kids to school. And then once we dropped them off, she'd get in the back seat of my car in a fetal position. She would cry till we picked them up from school at 3 o'clock. And it was horrific, black 2 months. And at the first time that I began to realize that I could love God no matter how bad and dark my world was. And it was dark. But I had hope. I had hope not that God would fix my marriage. Not that I would fix my marriage. Not that I would fix my wife. But I had hope that I could fix myself. That I could become better. That I could begin to do little acts of love. That I could begin to put my wife ahead of me. That, yeah, I was a macho man, and I was like, I'll die for you. And I had no doubt I would die for my wife. I will die for my wife or for any of my children. If a doctor told me she needs your heart, I'd close my eyes and give it to her without even blinking. But that's not what really it was all about. It was about that love, that no matter what that person does, no matter what that person looks like, no matter how that person acts, that you love them. And here's the secret, my friends. The most hardened of all hearts, the most difficult, the most hard heart will respond to unconditional love. When you love others that are unlovable, you will transform their lives. When you love your spouse, no matter how ugly it might seem, it will transform that spouse's heart. When you love people with the love of God, the way that he has loved us through most difficult times in our life, the way he has loved us no matter how bad of a choice we have made, the way that he still loves us today, then when you love people that way, especially in the world today, where we only love those that love us, or let me even take it further, when we only love those that think like us, those that belong to our tribe. Think about it. Think about the politics in our nation today. And think about if you believe there's a God, a real God, not a fairy tale God. Think about how much he loves the way you hate Democrats if you're a Republican, or the way you hate Republicans if you're a Democrat. Think about that for a minute. No matter how bad that political party acts or does, or that person that loves the political party acts or does, it's nothing compared to how bad you've done in the eyes of God. But he has never stopped loving you. So think about if we love others the way we love ourselves. Think about that. The way that God loves us. What a different world, what a different America we would have. Think about it, we stop dividing those lines and we stop spewing that hatred and stop watching all those social media or those news channels that do nothing but, makes that hatred become stronger. What a better world we would have. But better than having a better world, you know what we would have? Better marriage, a better family, better children. Because do you realize how many millions of young people are leaving the church or the faith? Today I heard a message that was amazing. And it's so true. Most people leave the faith because they have been taught of a God that is a fake God. What do I mean by that? A God, for example, like the pastor said today, a Secret Service God. What does that mean? A God that's going to protect you no matter what happens in your life. A God that will let no harm come to you like the Secret Service does to the person that they guard. But when that God doesn't do his duty, then we leave him. But you see, if that's the God that we created, we need to leave him. Because that's not God. That's a fake God. Or that's the God that we tell people how integrity, truth, and all that matters. And then we get home. And then something happens. And our children see that those were only words. See? Or when you tell people that you will die for what you believe, and that belief is true, and you are willing to believe, people will follow you for that. The problem is that we are just living in a world that's really a fantasy world. So my brothers and sisters, today, I have the most amazing marriage in the world that I wish for each and every one of you. And all of those of you that have broken marriages or marriages in despair or have abandoned your spouse for someone else, if another person cheats on you, being a married person, that other person is a cheater that will cheat on you too. Believe me, I'm 66, I've seen it all. A person that cheats on another person that is married is a cheater. And you know what a cheater is? A cheater. Don't think that you're God's gift to earth. That just because they cheated on their spouse, or that they don't get to cheat on you while you're cheating on your spouse, don't think it won't come back to you. It will. Build a marriage that will last. One day you said, I do. Till death do us apart. Live up to that commitment. Live a life that is worthy of your children imitating. Live a marriage that one day, if you are a father, your daughter will look to find a man like you. What type of man would she marry? Or if you're a woman, you will marry another, if you're a boy, you will marry a woman like your mother. What type of mother will he marry? Think about that. Our actions have implications way beyond us. We all can have. There's no such thing as I fell in love and I fell out of love. It's a choice. It's a choice that you make today to love or not love. But if you made that choice one day, be a person of integrity. Honor that choice. And sometimes that choice is beyond you. Sometimes you are in an abusive relationship with an abusive spouse. No one deserves that. Leave his ass or her ass. No one deserves to be abused. God doesn't abuse us. But if you're leaving because you fell out of love, or because that person is not meeting your wants, or because you found someone that talks prettier to you, or sends you the sexy text or pictures, if that's the reason you're leaving your spouse, I got news for you. You will leave that person too. Be honorable. Love your spouse as you love yourself. And perhaps maybe you just don't love yourself. And that's where you need to begin. But don't let outside forces destroy something as holy as your marriage. Love, unconditional. Love the way God loves us. That no matter how bad we've been, He doesn't turn His back on us. we've turned our backs on him. And abandon those false gods that tells you that they'll be there, that God will fix all your problems. That no matter what happens in life, he's going to be the fixer. He ain't a fixer. In this world, you will have trouble, but be of great courage. I have overcome. Even Jesus, being God, asked the Father to take the suffering that he was about to endure away from him, if it was God's will. He didn't want to go to the cross. He did it for you and me. But yet he was obedient. So therefore, God is not a fixer. If your marriage is broken, quit blaming others. Ask yourself, what have I done wrong? What do I need to do right? And if you do not want to lose your spouse, be of good cheer. There is hope. Love others unconditional, and you will break the most heart of all hearts. Be blessed. God bless you. And love others as you love yourself.